Okay, we're going to get started here. Good morning and welcome to the Santa Ana Police Department. My name is Officer Sonia Rojo, and I'm here to introduce Chief Valentin today. At the conclusion of this press conference, we will have media packets available for you, and any questions that you may have, we'll make accommodations to answer those questions. And before we go any further, Chief David Valentin.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. We have some very important news to share with you regarding crime pattern here in our city, and then more importantly, our response, our community response, and also resources that we're going to share with the public. Before I go any further, though, I'd like to introduce the mayor of the city, Vicente Sarmiento, to say a few words.
Good morning, and let me begin by saying, it's been a while that I've been out in public and seeing everybody, so it's, hopefully the first step in opening up, our city and opening up our way of life. And so, as we've been dealing with how do we open up safely with respect to public health, we also have to be aware that we have to open up in a way that's responsible with respect to public safety. And I know that the chief and his staff have identified a spike in crime here in our city that's very similar to a fact pattern that we're seeing in other big cities as well. So, I'll let him speak to the analytics and maybe the reasons and the causes why, but a lot of it may have to do with, just being in a pandemic situation, maybe anecdotally. We see that a lot of people are going through emotional and psychological experiences that may create this, but if it's not for that, we know that that will happen. We know that as we open up, commerce, as we open up schools, as we open up our community, again, we're going to be seeing some of these impacts. So I'm really grateful to the chief and the city manager and our city staff for being forward-thinking and being able to converse with the public, because as we address these, these spikes in crime, these maybe irregular activities that we're experiencing in the city, we're going to do it in a responsible way, but we're going to include the public and we're going to include the community and not just rely on traditional methods and conventional ways of dealing with core police functioning, but really engaging with our public. And so I applaud his efforts and the department's efforts to do exactly what we're doing here today, which is being more transparent, more open, and again, including the public and the community to be part of the solution, because we know that as a city, none of us want to see any crime. And so, to the extent that we work at this as a team with our code enforcement and planning department and others that have ancillary roles on this, it's really important. So for me, it is a very important moment, because this is sort of a paradigm shift for us, where we are going to be more fully disclosing things that we want to do and asking for support and help. And so I certainly applaud the chief and his, again, in his forward-thinking approach. So I also want to thank our men and women of the department who put themselves out there daily to keep us safe. We're going to be asking more of you to do more as you see more people in the public and we see more activity on the streets. And you'll see by some of these devices that are to my right and some of the weapons that have been seized, law enforcement has continued throughout this pandemic, so nothing has stopped. But I just want to thank you all for continuing your efforts, for being here, to all of you who have braved not only public safety concerns, but public health concerns, because sometimes we don't thank you enough that you're out there dealing with things in your core functions as officers, but you're also having to deal with just your own public health concerns and things that you may bring back to your own family. So let me take this opportunity to thank you for that. Those are my comments. I wanted to turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem David Peñalosa, who's also joining me, and I know that the both of us speak on behalf of our councils in thanking everybody for being here. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, everybody. I'm Mayor Pro Tem David Peñalosa. Thank you, Chief Valentin, for your leadership in putting this together. We'll keep it very brief, but just wanted to say that thank all of you for being here. It's been a troubling year for everybody, and these last couple of months here in Santa Ana have also, have a troubling pattern, which I believe, in relation. And so I just want to thank all of you and Chief Valentin. Hopefully we could address this and continue keeping our community safe, because that's one of the priorities that we all took when we all took similar oaths, is to protect our community. And whatever we can do, whatever the press can do to help us out, to highlight the areas where we're going to be focusing and increasing, just the hands-on approach of how we can address the situation, I'd be forever thankful. So thank you, and I'll turn it back to Chief Valentin.
Before I get into the detail here, again, thank you for coping with us. We have refrigeration unit over here. We have cars coming up here in the parking structure. We're still working, and so thank you for that. I want to also introduce Councilwoman Nelida Mendoza, who has joined us, City Manager Christine Ridge, Assistant City Manager Stephen Mendoza, and then Planning Director Min Tai, who has joined us as well, part of our executive management team at the City of Santa Ana. So again, the three areas that I'm going to cover today is what has been our police response, the community response, which is just as critical, and then resources that we work with and continue to provide our community. Since the beginning of 2021, the department noted an increase in the level of reported violent crime, including homicides. The increase in violent crime, unfortunately, is consistent with patterns both in small and large cities across the country throughout 2020. What we've determined based on our crime analysis here at Santa Ana PD is our spike, unfortunately, has hit us in the beginning of the first quarter of 2021, which is what we're going to talk about. Year to date, so far this year we have 8 homicides compared to 1 this same period last year. 4 of those 8 have determined to be gang related. 3 of those are determined to have an associated factor to these illegal gambling dens, and we'll get into some of the illustrations that we have up here. And then 1 was a domestic violence situation that occurred. The city has experienced 37 shooting incidents thus far. When you look at comparing back in 2016, we had 70. So although there's an increase from last year, there is a decline over the last 5 years. We've seen a decline beginning in 2019, and then of course an increase in the first 2 months of this year. Through investigative resources, analysis between several homicides and illegal gambling locations, we've identified this increase in crime. We've also looked at community complaints, crime reports, criminal intelligence, and then information provided by our city's code enforcement, and confirmed that various types of crime in and around illegal gambling dens have drastically impacted quality of life, both in our neighborhoods and also in business districts. So our police response. So after identifying the issue and speaking to the mayor's comment about transparency, we're very much forward-leaning and acknowledging what is occurring. And then just as important, what is our response? Together with my command staff and working with all the officers of the department and really looking smartly at where the data is driving us, where are these incidents occurring. Operation Community First was put together, and you'll hear more about that. That is the overarching mission that I set forward to the men and women of the police department, and they responded. Operation Community First is a prolonged, multi-layered approach utilizing proactive policing methods in conjunction with community engagement, investigative resources, and again, working collaboratively with our code enforcement. Removal of illegal firearms from the street. Very, very important. It's one of our top priorities. For every weapon that you remove off the streets, you've prevented, likely, further crime, further violent crime, okay? So to date, we've seized 71 illegal firearms and assault rifles, which are illustrated in part in some of these boards here to my left that you can take a closer look at. These details will also be in your media packet when those are distributed to you. Probation compliance checks. In partnership with the Orange County Probation Department, 26 individuals associated with 2 known active and violent criminal street gangs were identified for compliance checks. The result was 20 location searches, 5 warrant arrests, 1 parolee at large arrest, 1 seizure of a firearm, and 1 narcotics offense arrest. In partnership with investigative resources and our crime analysis unit, our Santa Ana Police Gang Unit targeted areas where increased levels of violence were occurring, making 68 arrests, seizing 15 firearms, $14,000 in U.S. currency seized, and over 2 pounds of illegal narcotics. Again, Santa Ana Police Major Enforcement Team, a group of officers specially assigned to impact violent crime and remove the most violent criminals from our streets, made 137 arrests, seized 15 firearms, 15,000 in U.S. currency, and over 1 pound of illegal narcotics. This mission and continues has incorporated every aspect of the police department to include our directed patrol officers and our officers that respond to everyday calls for service. So their joint effort has attributed 49 arrests, the seizure of 36 firearms, including 2 gang members who were across the street from a vigil location where a gang homicide had occurred, who were armed with another handgun. So they likely prevented yet another shooting or homicide in retaliation. And this is through proactive efforts. The Orange County Violent Gang Task Force, which is made up of the FBI, U.S. Marshals, and various local agencies, is a multi-jurisdiction initiative assigned to address sophisticated criminal gang enterprises throughout Orange County, with also a nexus to Santa Ana gangs. In March 2021, the task force executed multiple search warrants in the city of Fullerton targeting a violent criminal street gang. This action highlighted our ongoing commitment to not only our federal partners, but also jurisdictions throughout Orange County as we mutually address gang violence. As is the case with many cities across the country, unlawful gambling dens have also been a haven for organized crime, violence, narcotics use and sales, prostitution, money laundering, a litany of other crimes of public disorder. The locations have forced adjacent businesses to close and tormented neighborhoods with violence and crimes of public disorder. Our Special Investigations Division, again in conjunction with the Planning and Building and Code Enforcement Departments, identified 41 active gambling dens in the city of Santa Ana. In collaboration with Code Enforcement, our police department developed a comprehensive strategy to target and address the nuisance created by these establishments. A 3-pronged approach targeting customers, business operators, and property owners was utilized. To date, the city of Santa Ana has closed via search warrant, arrests, voluntary compliance with business owners, a total of 36 of these 41 illegal establishments. The increased enforcement resulted in 103 arrests, the seizure of 2 additional firearms, $87,000 in U.S. currency, 169 gambling machines, and approximately a half pound of narcotics. Through collaboration with Code Enforcement, 14 of these 36 locations, both residential and commercial, were red tagged, condemned, boarded up, and had utilities disconnected. Additionally, the city issued numerous administrative citations to business owners with attached fines. Our homicide division, homicide detectives working the homicide cases, have made 2 arrests directly related to these cases, with 1 arrest likely associated with yet a second gang homicide. in 2021. We are also working with our U.S. Marshals partners to coordinate the extradition of a third homicide suspect in this rash of 8 homicides. The fourth also was a domestic violence incident. That person is in custody. So essentially, we're talking about a 50% clearance rate, which exceeds typical gang homicide clearance rates. Community response. The department remains committed to community-oriented policing and partnering with our community to address violent crime. It is the core of our ability to continue to collaborate and provide for a safe community, for our community. So we must continue that collaboration. We encourage the community to continue to call us. We have great relationships. We've enhanced those over the last several years, and we continue to invest in that critical relationship with our community. Although hampered by the pandemic, we've continued to engage with our community through socially distanced activities such as pop-up COVID compliant events, community safety preparedness booths, and situational awareness messaging through social media, which many of you have probably seen and followed. Area officers have also been assigned to respective neighborhoods as direct liaison with the community for increased community communication. Resources. Community partnerships with nonprofit organizations such as Taller San Jose, which provides job training and resources to adult offenders, some of which are former gang members, to reduce recidivism rates in our community, continue to be a focus of our police department. Community engagement efforts to enhance relationships with community members and neighborhoods, which are education and prevention based, include Community Academy, Parent Academy, our Santa Ana Police Athletic and Activity League, which immediately shifted to an online platform to provide for engagement to students in our school district. Very, very important. The Orange County Gang Reduction Intervention Partnership, OC GRIP, which is a collaboration with the Orange County District Attorney's Office, the Orange County Probation Department, and the Santa Ana Unified School District. Consistent messaging has also been provided to social media for transparency awareness and assistance in solving crimes, and also prevention tips for our community. The Santa Ana Police Department stands committed with our community to combat all crimes that negatively impact our community. The results of this operation illustrate the proliferation of these gambling establishments in our neighborhoods and business communities, but it also illustrates the large volume of illegal firearms being accessed and utilized by the criminal element. We will continue to unite with the community to address and combat this issue. And again, the call to have the community continue to reach out to us as they have been is absolutely critical for our success. Again, identifying an issue, what has been our response, community response, and just as important, resources to redirect behavior. Community first is our department motto, and we stand committed to ensure that we are focused on this principle to make a difference in our community. That's what I have. So with that, what I'd like to do is, and again, the talking points here will be provided to you in a media packet and a couple of other spreadsheets, date, location, time of each of the 8 homicides, and also a comparative of homicides over the last 5 years. So with that, I will take questions. Yes. Yes, thank you for the question. And actually, I think it's a little bit of both, probably. During the pandemic, in fact, ironically, today is the 1-year anniversary. We started with a 2-week, stay-at-home order, and here we are a year later and still moving forward. I think it's both of those factors, similar to even street racing, kind of redirecting illegal activity. Folks take possession of a storefront, and it's unfortunately, a very lucrative business that they engage in, and it's a cost of doing business for them. If they're open for a week or a month, they've made quite a bit of money. Each one of these machines that you see here, the larger one to my far right, I understand can make 8 to 10,000 a day. And so they set up shop, and we get reports, that's the reason why I'm continuing to encourage the community to call us, such as what has occurred thus far. 41 have been identified, 36 shut down. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, the recent case on what? Yeah, so we did have a Santa Ana police officer plead guilty to a bribery case that actually occurred well before this spike in crime. That occurred, it's not related, no. Methamphetamine, cocaine, unfortunately fentanyl, which is extremely dangerous to both the user and people handling that substance. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. So what we have determined, and we still have various active investigations, is there is a tie to Asian organized crime that oversees a large part of this industry. It's not exclusive, but a large part. And then, unfortunately, what they're doing is they're hiring gang members to provide security, armed gang members in and around these facilities. Any other questions? Yes. Yes. Yeah, the shootings that I mentioned, we have 37 thus far this year. And so last year we had, I believe, 11 was the number. And again, it's somewhat consistent also with the increase in homicides. And so that's part of the daily and weekly analysis that we look at and redirecting resources to address that. Yes, sir.
How many homicides and shootings occurred actually in the establishment?
So we have 3 of the homicides that are associated to the homicides, and they're either occurring right outside the establishment or certainly with a direct nexus to the establishment. As I said, gang members are controlling these establishments from the inside, and like any other criminal enterprise, they have rules of engagement, and it may be the case that they defer their violence out into the street and not in the confines of the actual illegal gambling den.
How about shootings? Just shootings without?
Yeah, so that's the overall number that I have thus far, and we have had other shootings and then individuals arrested leaving these gambling dens that are armed with handguns. A question over here? Yes, sir. So it's a regional piece. I know that other cities in Orange County also have this ongoing issue. And so Orange County, the greater LA, Los Angeles area as well. If you're asking me where they're based out of, they're transitory. And so, they're directing the hired security from these gang members inside. And wherever they can establish and be unnoticed, that's where they're going to go. So we've seen a concerted effort here in our city. So I hope not, but you may see them sprout somewhere else. It's been a little bit of both, actually. And again, I can't say enough about the adjacent businesses and residents that continue to call us. We've received calls, voicemails, emails, thanking the hardworking men and women of the department that have gone into the neighborhoods and these business districts to address this. Yes?
You mentioned expeditions. Can you tell us where you're seeking to get that?
No, I cannot. Unfortunately, not much. So that's another byproduct of the pandemic. We've seen institutions having to reduce their population by 50% because of the COVID situation, but that will not prevent us from continuing to address the issue. They attract people that they know what they're doing there. They oftentimes do have criminal histories. The narcotics involvement is interesting because especially methamphetamine, all of the substances that keep you alert, that's a concerted effort to keep you putting money in these machines. So I can tell you that this is the first step. The world will see this piece, and again, I don't want to see this in another community, but the zero tolerance is here, and so we'll continue to address the issue. Okay, that'll do it. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, and the PIO will have the press packets.